You are listening to Withstood, produced by Crossbrand.
Crossbrand folks, anybody that's going to be listening today, I just want to say we are so excited to have our guest on today. We have a gangster. We have a lawyer.
And an ex-felon.
And we have an ex-con.
That's right.
It sounds like the start of a joke.
I don't know if I need to just say three preachers walk into a bar. I don't know if I need to say that today.
Yeah, I love it.
We have with us today Real Life Ministries. I'm not going to spoil it in the intro, but I want you to know this is an incredible interview. It'll be one for the top two as far as I'm concerned, as I've interviewed many before. Listen. All right, folks. Welcome back to the Crossbrand Withstood podcast. It's been a minute since we have interviewed anybody. We're pretty snooty and snobby on who we like to come in here. Typically, we have stories that deal with large amounts of grace. And so, again, we just welcome you to the podcast. We are so blessed to have a ministry team here. I'll let you know in a minute how we found them. But at this time, I'd like for you guys to introduce yourself and tell us what ministry you're with.
Well, I'm Jeremy Coe. This is my wife, Eve Coe. This is Chris Aleman. He's our executive producer. We're Real Life Ministries out of Tyler, Texas, just down the road. And I know you said that usually you're pretty snooty, but you've got friends in low places.
Amen,
we're glad
brother.
to be here today.
Amen.
We're a prison ministry. We've been focused on reaching men and women behind bars almost exclusively since 2016. And that has just evolved over the last few years. Of course, we're going into preach, and we still go into preach. We started doing newsletters, and we still do newsletters. And then COVID shut us down, and we started doing a radio program on one station, and then it grew to 23 radio stations. And now in the last 3 months, it's grown to 1.3 million tablets all over the United States, and about to be more. So we're amazed, excited, humbled by what God is doing, and really honored to be here today with you, Pastor.
No, that is not what they call you in prison. What do they call you?
They call me Mama Eve.
Mama Eve, that's right. Yeah.
And one of the units, they call me the little gangsta.
Well,
because I get on to them.
I'm not sure how comfortable I am being in the same small room with you now.
Did you hide all the sharp objects?
Little gang, yeah.
But it's a very small gangsta because I'm only 4'9"3/4".
Yes, ma'am. I will tell you, coming in here, y'all need to know this. I wish she would just walk around. Her shoes are squeaking today, and I didn't know if that was like a signal for Jeremy to know where she's at or when she's coming in. Yeah,
self-defense mechanism.
Yeah, Chris, I didn't know you was going to bring all the cameras in today, or I would have shaved or something. You know, you're fine. All right, okay,
yeah,
this is great.
Yeah,
this is great. All right. There has got to be a backstory on how you started this ministry.
Wow.
Absolutely. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Well, I guess really it was my heart. I'm a pastor's daughter, and was a denomination. We had a lot of rules growing up, and so I thought that I'd met God, and I didn't like Him. I didn't think I could measure up to all His rules.
Oh my goodness!
And so, even though I had not tried God myself, I thought I had, because I was a kid. I thought, I've tried God. I don't like Him. I don't really like His people, and so I got to go somewhere else. But I got to find something real. I've got to find peace. My home was broken, even though my dad was a pastor. And, he was just an old alcoholic that got saved, didn't really have that much discipling. Whatever discipling he had, he was taught those rules.
Sure.
And so I got locked up at 11 years old for drugs, truancy, and deadly weapons. Our church was considered kind of the only full gospel church in town, so that was a little strange. I'm the youngest of 6. And I was a broken girl. So I was out of the house at 13.
Oh, my goodness.
And at 14, a couple took me in that were Christians, and I lived with them till I graduated. And I got a lot of stability. I was also in another home at 13, a Baptist home, Roll-Off Enterprises. in Corpus Christi.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So
Yeah, we know.
Okay. So I was
We
there.
know Mr. Lester.
Yes, and he had died maybe a year prior to my going in. The homes changed somewhat but I still got a foundation there.
Oh, that's great.
I guess there's good and bad in everything and everywhere you go, and I learned the word. I really did seek God at 13 years old in there, and ask for change, and I really got some change and my mind made up in some things at 13. However, life continued to happen after I got out, and when this couple took me in, I was 14. And I had the most stability I'd ever had in my life. So I wanted change. And I thought, I'm not going to mess this up by doing bad things. But what I didn't realize is I was changing in that process.
Yes.
So anyway, my heart has always been for those broken people because I was that broken person. And
Wow.
yeah.
Wow. Did you graduate from the home?
No.
No, so you
I got
transitioned
back
out of the home at 13.
and graduated in a high school.
Oh, okay.
Yes. And so, my husband and I, when we got together, what have you, he was from the other side of the tracks, the good side.
She calls me Beaver Cleaver.
Yeah, he was Beaver
know.
Cleaver.
Yeah.
He had a very good and pure life,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
he knew God very young, really knew God. And I don't know, it was in my heart. We pastored a church, a free world church, but it's always been in my heart for the street people, the drug addict, the nobody, the black sheep.
When we started pastoring, we were in a storefront church with no walls or anything, right across from the jail in Henderson, Texas. That's where we started in 2001. And we were right across the street from the county jail. So very quickly God opened the door for us to go start ministering in the jail. She had done some prison ministry before. It was my first time ever doing jail or prison ministry. And so really that's who we immediately started drawing. We drew people from the streets. We drew many people. And we have this idea that because we live in East Texas and it's the buckle of the Bible Belt, that everybody knows God, everybody grew up in church. And what we would find is many of the people, you'd say, well, like Moses. And they're like,
Who's Moses?
Who's Moses?
Right.
Yeah.
They did not know. They were unchurched in the most church city in America, probably in Henderson. And so that's who started coming, and lots of people with methamphetamines problems and other drug issues. And we
went to the jail for 14 years. 14 years every single Monday. There in Rusk County, which was right across the street.
When did that start? What year was that?
2001. Yeah. 2001.
Yeah. And so we were there.
So this whole deal started out of Henderson.
Yes, that's right.
Of course, before I met my husband, I traveled across the United States and would speak in churches, denominational, non-denominational. I did do some jail, prison ministry, TYC, that kind of thing whenever I could.
Wow.
But, we did the jail there for 14 years every single Monday. And then when we moved to Tyler, for a few years and opened a free world church here. And we were still doing the same thing. We send out a van to pick up the Federal Halfway House of Men here. We sent a van to the Federal Halfway House of Women. We sent a van to pick up the State Halfway House of Men for church. And we had our own halfway house.
Oh, my goodness.
Yes.
And so it just kind of evolved. We started going into Beto, which is the big prison down in Tennessee Colony. It's got the reputation for being, if not the toughest, one of the toughest prisons, not only in Texas, but in the United States. I mean, it has a reputation.
Oh, I didn't realize.
When prisoners hear the name Beto, they're like, ooh, they cringe immediately about Beto. And that's where God opened the door for us to first start going. And that was probably 2013, 2014, I'm guessing.
And the miracle was just like how we met you guys. Me and Carl were talking. Carl became our assistant pastor, but we found him in Rusk County Jail.
Yeah.
And then he came out, went through our halfway house program, and then eventually became our assistant pastor.
Wow.
And he's still with our team. He still goes in and ministers. He was not a functioning addict. He was one that wandered the streets in his hoodie looking for his next fix for 20 years. And so now Carl is still with us and doing that, but I lost my train of thought. Where were we?
Well, we're talking about how God opened the doors to get into Beto. Was
right.
miraculous.
Okay, so it was miraculous
Yeah.
because, me and Carl were talking. We're like, we want to start going. He wanted to start going to jail. I want to start going to jail. We found out they only go one-on-one here. They don't have like a church service.
Oh.
And so we wanted to have church service. So we went to this banquet that they were having at Green Acres for volunteers or something. And it was there we met these two guys, the prison coordinator of Beto and another guy
No
that
way.
ministered.
Yeah.
And then they said we want we said we want to go to prison. They said, well, we're looking for people to come in as volunteers. So we all met for lunch, and we were all kind of suspicious of each other, sitting on the other side of the table, because I was wondering too, like, do they let women in? Are they going to have a problem with that? And they were wondering about us. So we sat at lunch at Luby's when Luby's was still open.
Yeah.
And that's how we started. We went on our first day, and then they gave us our own day, and we began to go into Beto, and we haven't stopped since.
Now, the quiet guy next to me,
Yeah.
Chris.
Yes.
How in the world did you get hooked up with these folks?
Well, one day I'm sitting in Beto unit prison. I'm locked up, and I see them walk in the door.
Yeah.
He's in the sound booth.
Yeah.
He was
Running
the
the sound,
sound
yeah.
tech there. He was
Really?
he was the first person we met in Beto.
Yeah.
He was the only one in the chapel when we walked in that day.
My goodness.
And like now, he's wearing many hats. He's a sound tech. He was the guitarist. He was on the worship team, and he was the inmate pastor. So God connected us to him, and it's just amazing.
When was that, Chris?
20.
We met you in 2014.
2014.
2014.
Yeah, okay. Long time.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
What, if you don't mind me asking, what was your story?
Goodness. I had come from, an abusive background, and just
Lots of
being
drugs.
in that, yeah. My parents were kind of hippies, and so there was a lot of drug use and a lot of alcohol use and a lot of abuse.
Oh,
and
man.
just growing up in that situation, I can't blame everything that I've done on that, but it influenced me to make a lot of bad decisions.
Sure,
and,
sure.
Landed me in prison. And I had been locked up for, I want to say, about 11 years.
When we
I
met.
met them.
Oh, my goodness, Chris. Wow.
And let me tell you, I met God early on in life, but I didn't hold on to it. And but when I got in prison, I started serving God almost immediately, because I knew that God was trying to reach out to me. And so I buckled down. I said, you know what, God, I'm not going to ask you to get me out of here, but what I am going to ask you to do is change me and make me new. And that's all. I never asked God to get me out of prison. And I just buckled in and started seeking after him. And, man, I started getting I had favor in prison. I felt like Joseph. I was going places other inmates didn't go. I was doing things other inmates didn't do.
That is crazy.
And just being in wherever God, Eve said something the other day, it's kind of like being in a river that's raging river, and you're just kind of getting carried along by the current. That's been my experience in Christ.
Wow.
Since
Amen.
I've been.
And what was so
That's good.
cool is he was running sound and all, and he told us, when we met him, and he was still in for a while, he wanted to do producing and editing and that kind of thing, and then he got out straight to do it for the radio for us. We all started, at the same time. He started with us, or we wouldn't have been able to do it. Like, he's the genius with the electronics and the technical stuff, and he's the one that does it and became our producer. So, hear his heart's desire. Yes. And he had told someone in there, a minister, that he wanted to produce, he wanted to edit, and they said, you might as well get that old dream out of your head, because it'll never happen.
Why in the world would they say
Yes.
that?
I don't think they. A lot of people sometimes, I think, do stuff just to check a box.
Yeah.
In their Christian walk.
Yep.
And I think he may have just been one of those people.
Yep.
He was just checking a box. I did prison ministry. Check.
And sometimes also
That's pitiful.
people, they only can take you as far as they've been, as
Right.
we talk
Right.
about.
Oh,
They
no,
can
that's
only
right.
guide
That's
someone
rich.
as far as they've gone in
That's
their walk
rich.
with God. And if they've never experienced a big,
Miraculous,
powerful, miraculous
shocking, great
God of the
God. Come on.
impossible
That's it.
like we
Yes.
have, then maybe they didn't have the vision to see how
Right.
that could happen.
Right.
Right.
But what's crazy is, one of the messages that God has given us to minister all over prisons all over the United States in the last few years is about the outsiders. And when God gave me this message so many years, 3 or 4 years ago, it really just kind of revolutionized my way of thinking, because the Galileans, he grew up in the absolute worst neighborhood in all of Israel.
Absolutely.
I mean, it was the backwater. It was the redneck of the woods.
That's right.
It was the bad neighborhood. It was the Section 8 housing. That's where Jesus grew up. And obviously God in his divine providence led Mary and Joseph to live there.
That's right.
And Jesus grew up in the bad neighborhood, surrounded by the other kids from the bad neighborhood. And when Jesus first started building the team that he was going to have help him change the world, like a spiritual revolution,
Yes.
universal revolution. He didn't go to the seminaries in Jerusalem. He didn't go to the synagogue. He didn't go to the temple. He walked out his front porch. He saw a old boy standing down there, that he went to high school with. He said, hey, man, come follow me.
There you go.
I'll make you fishers of men. And he picked blue-collar workers, and guys were uneducated. And I was thinking about that verse earlier on our way over here. God brought it to mind in Acts 4:23, after Jesus is ascended into heaven and the early church is starting to take off. And the apostles are marching into the temple, even though they know they're going to get arrested and probably killed.
Yeah.
And the synagogue rulers, they say, I know these are uneducated and untrained men.
That's right.
I mean, they were judging them by their accents. They said to Peter, you've got to be a Galilean because you are such a redneck. You are such a hick. I can hear it in your voice. You've got to be a Galilean.
Yeah.
But they knew something was different, and they knew that they couldn't explain with natural thinking how these guys could be doing these miraculous works. And it even talked about the confidence that they had. How can they have this confidence?
I know. Yeah.
They're uneducated.
Yeah.
They're untrained.
Yeah.
They know something you don't know.
That's right.
They know someone you don't know.
That's right.
And they concluded they must have been with Jesus.
Come on. Yeah.
And so that's what it is right now. And I know that's probably happening in your church too, and all over the United States, all over the world. God is raising up the outsiders
Yes.
Right.
to
Absolutely.
lead
Yes.
this last move of God.
And before you guys leave today,
Yeah.
I don't know how legal it would be. You need to snap a shot of the painting. Have y'all seen the painting, the Outsiders painting?
No.
have not.
No.
Oh my gosh.
I had no clue.
I wish your guys
Oh.
could see it.
You wanna
We're
go
going to
on
take a
we'll
picture
put it on
and we're going to
video.
put it on this podcast.
It is. Well, it's one of the reasons I'm here. I came across it and in Abilene in 1999. And it was it's based on an actual, let me give you the backstory on this because y'all need to hear the backstory. This is y'all's day, but let me tell you about it. When you walk up to the picture, and I was in a exhibit hall at the Western Heritage Classic, thousands and thousands of my people from Western Heritage go there. We eat, trade bits and spurs, hats, clothes, and rodeo. And so I'm a grown man. It's 1999. I walk in and I see this painting of a fancy church, late 1800s. On the outside, there's two dirty cowboys singing to the top of their lungs outside.
Wow.
All right. So I looked at it and it messed with me. Because I knew in the church setting I was in, we were too pristine. We were too clean. I couldn't get any of my friends that I rodeoed with, I went to the horse sales with. I couldn't get, and all, my friends that messed up, they're on dope.
Yeah.
They wouldn't come into my fancy church.
Right.
And I wasn't pastoring. And I flipped that thing over, and what it is a little girl was in a Kansas trail town in the late 1800s when the cowboys were bringing cattle up from Texas. And those old cowboys, they'd start missing their mamas and they'd start missing some of those old gospel songs. But they were outside, they were dirty, they were stinky, inside and out. And the people in those fancy churches would not let them in.
Okay.
They would literally have to sit on their horse outside the church. I started bawling, grown man.
Yeah.
And I just lost it right there in the exhibit hall in Abilene, Texas. And I went back and started looking, and Luke 18, the sinner couldn't even go into the synagogue. He hit himself in the chest, and he said, God, have mercy on me, a sinner. And while the other guy is up there just telling God just exactly how good he is.
Yeah.
And that's y'all's. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to go to preaching, but that's y'all's ministry.
Yes.
And
Yes.
the fringe, the outside, the corners
Yeah.
of our culture and society. That's y'all. That's y'all. But I want to do something. You talking about these divine intersections?
Yeah.
Another big word in
Yeah.
churches, we call it providence, right?
That's right.
So how did we come to know each other? Y'all got to tell this story.
We'll let Chris tell that
All
story.
right, Chris.
You know, I'm driving to their house about 8 o'clock in the morning one morning, and there's a car in front of me, and I just happened to witness an accident. A lady pulled out and hit the young guy that was driving in front of me. Mm-hmm. And so I did the citizen thing. I pulled over and I made sure everybody was okay. And since I work for a lawyer,
who's sitting in the podcast room,
I figured, well, I'll go ahead and give him a card. And I told him, I said, hey, you got to call us, but you probably should call somebody. But if you want to call us, here's a card. We
Sure.
personal injury. And so that was it. The officer. I had a camera on my dashboard. I'm kind of a
tech
geek.
guy.
Yeah,
so.
he likes toys. Is what I'm trying to tell you.
The video so that he had a witness of that, and
which was wild, by the way.
Yeah.
And then I left, and in my mind I didn't think I would hear from him again. But about a week later, his father called us and said, hey, we're having trouble with the insurance company.
Yeah.
So he's the one to hire us. So I was like, okay. And so I'm working, and he sent me some emails, and I look at the email, and I noticed that he sent it from his work email, which is this very church. And so I thought to myself, because I'm trying to be aware of God, and my immediate thought was, wait a second.
Yep.
There's something going on here.
Mm-hmm.
And
He
I
kept
told
telling
him.
me.
I
He
told him,
had since when the accident happened and all. He told me about it, and I felt like he was nagging me. he kept telling me there's something to this. This is a God connection. I was like, no, this is a God connection. I'm telling you, there's more to this. He kept saying, I want you to call this guy's father. Like, he's a drummer for a band. He found out he was a drummer for a Christian band, and he's like, I want you. He said, this is a God thing.
Right.
So
yeah, that's really what it was. I prayed about it, and I kept the feeling in me that, man, we have to connect. On
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because I handle cases. I deal with clients all the time, and I never try to cross that professional boundary.
Absolutely.
And so this was a boundary that I knew that if I crossed, it would be something. It would have to be something unique. And I told him the night before. I said, I'm just going to send him an email. And I texted him, but I'm just going to tell him what we do and see what happens. And
they were so interested.
yeah.
Cody, and then his wife, she was
just
so
gone
interested
crazy
and wanted to
since then.
talk to me, and we ended up talking on the phone, and I was amazed by her heart and all, and told her what we do,
No,
and they were
what are you
like,
talking
we used to support somebody in prison ministry, maybe you should come visit our church, they're like,
Maybe you
yes,
should.
oh my goodness.
And I'm telling you, look, I and this is no knock, but I just didn't expect to come into
I
this
know.
church.
Yeah.
Wow, I feel
find
at home.
The Spirit as
Yes.
powerfully as I
Well,
did.
we're blessed. We're
Because
blessed.
We go to a lot of churches,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
we walk out of a lot of them going, "Okay, that was okay."
Yeah.
But when we walked out of here,
we just still need to be gritty. We just want we support some ministries that regular mission ministries, okay? But then I've added, since I've been here, a new category of missions, and I call them gritty missions. And so when we support strip club ministries, when we support anti-trafficking, that's the
great.
outsiders, man. That's right in the corners.
Yeah, let's go.
And so what happened to Chris, he happened to be behind Precious. Don't let anybody talk you out of this, guys. They call him, he thinks his name's Taylor, but he's Precious. He's just too cute to be Taylor. And he's way too, clean and groomed and golly. And Taylor had a little accident, And of course, Jeremy, like I say, y'all don't want to say this, but Jeremy, I don't know how he has time to be a lawyer, but
Wow, that's a whole nother podcast.
Jeremy's a lawyer. He's an attorney. He is they are talking about is Cody Mahaffey and Vanessa Mahaffey, and Cody leads our worship team here.
Awesome.
And I don't know how in the world we got them here. We don't deserve them.
Awesome team.
Of course, we don't deserve banjo music either.
Yeah,
I mean, but these guys are incredible.
Yes.
And those of you who are listening, just don't ever. Hey, guys, y'all listen to me. Don't ever underestimate God's power
Right.
in a boo boo, in a bad thing.
Seemingly,
you can't.
right.
It is always about Romans 8:28. It is always about God works His will, His good through all things.
He's
And it did that
always
way.
doing stuff. He's always everything, and I've tried to learn to look at life that way.
Yes.
Anything that happens, okay, God's doing something.
Well,
What is
you wouldn't
God
be
doing?
sitting here if you didn't
Right.
get busted.
Right.
That's right.
That's correct. Yeah.
You know, you wouldn't be
crazy.
clean and sober if
Right.
if
That's
I mean, so yes,
Amen.
incredible, incredible. Y'all got them Bibles open.
Yes.
Uh-oh.
Lay it on me, sister.
Yes. Yes. I do want to read this. It was some years ago. I was teaching at my own church, and I get bored easy.
No way.
And so, it's like, God,
I am so
praying.
thankful we don't have enough pictures on the wall in here. We would never get through this interview
Like,
with you.
Lord, what should I teach on? And he said, why don't you go to the book of Esther? I was like, boring. And he
No
said,
way.
listen, he said, we're not talking about Esther. I want to talk about Vashti. I was like, huh. It kind of sounded
There you
interesting.
go.
I had never heard anything really preached on Vashti in my entire life growing up in the church and, all these years in ministry. And so he said, like, Eve, if I am, we have this Take Me to the King song. We have Take Me to the King or videos, movies, little pamphlets, all kinds of things. And where the king represents God for Esther. But when they talk about Vashti, even our study notes and study Bibles and commentaries will talk bad about the king when he asked Vashti to come.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And they'll say, well, maybe he didn't know the law of the Persia and the Medes, but in the scripture it says it was the law of the Persia and the Medes. Like they didn't really read this. And so so he took me there and he said, if I'm the king in the second chapter, I said, yes, God. He said, then I'm the king in the first. Like I changed not. I said, okay, God. So when I went and I looked at it, I saw it in a whole new different light. And I'm just going to read just this portion. It says, these events happened in the days of King Xerxes, which was a title, by the way, not his name. He reigned over 127 provinces, stretching from India to Ethiopia. At that time, Xerxes ruled his empire from his royal throne at the fortress of Susa. In the third year of his reign, he gave a banquet for all of his nobles and his officials. He invited all the military officers of Persia and Media, as well as the princes and nobles of the provinces. The celebration lasted for 180 days, a tremendous display of the opulent wealth of his empire and the pomp and the splendor of his majesty. So this first party was a long, long party. And it was celebrated for 180 days, and it represents the who's who, the ones we expect, the churchy folk, and the Jew, of course, was called first. It was never to leave us out, but it was to give them an example of how to live, so that they could go and spread the message. It was never meant for the church, in other words, to keep it inside the walls.
Right.
This is a filling station. So that the rest of the week we can be the church.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right.
And so this is what happened. He was showing them all his splendor and majesty, but this is what is expected. It's when Obama or Trump or Biden have a party, and they invite the who's who. They don't even like each other. They don't even like each other, but they're there.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So that's what's expected. The early church, the Jew, the who's who, the churchy people. But when it was all over, the king gave a banquet for all the people. It's an after party, the party after the party, the real. From the greatest to the least, this was something that had never been done. So the God is here speaking in seasons. Yeah. That there was a season that he was showing Israel a season for the church, a season, but there is another season that is upon us right now, which is why God has called us to prison ministry, why he's raising up the nobody, the nothing, and the little Eves all over the world.
Yeah.
Because when it was all over, he gave a banquet from the greatest to the least. Now he goes, go to the projects, go invite Polanski and go invite Cofield and Michael's unit and, go invite Death Row. They're having revival in Death Row everywhere right now. Go invite them.
Oh, my goodness.
And he says, listen, he says, the greatest to the least, it lasted for 7 days, and that number means completion. In other words, it isn't over. It's not over until my people are in, the nothing and the nobody, the ones that have been left out and unfed and unpastured. Now they're going to get it. And I'm telling you, I could go on all day, but it's happening right now.
Yeah.
In 2021, God Behind Bars, which is the Pando app, was created for prisoners. It wasn't we'll do this and then we'll, maybe if the prisoners see it. It was created for the prisoners because God is calling them. It was when he sent us in and told us to go on the tablet. And we're getting calls right now from people. They're saying, I feel called to prison ministry. And I'm like, well, have you ever been in? No, I just don't know why. But I feel called to prison ministry.
Right.
Why? Because God, it's the season that he's feeding his people and getting them ready. Because in the last day, I'm telling you, there's going to be mass release soon. And there's already, people are making parole. There's not enough workers behind bars right now.
Yeah.
And so they're making parole. They're letting them out more on parole. There's going to be mass release.
Absolutely.
And when that happens and persecution comes on the United States, like we've never known, these are the people that risk their lives for a little rock, crack, cocaine.
Yeah.
They're going to risk their lives for Jesus.
Oh, wow.
They're going to be willing to go back to prison saying, I've already been there. Do what you got to do.
Right.
When they've given their life, like in a gang, when they've set their life, if I die, I die. They've already learned to do that for something that wasn't worth it, but for something that is, they're going to give their life and they're going to risk it.
Yeah.
And so God is preparing them. And I tell you, we are just so honored to be a part of it.
Wow. Okay. All right. So practical. How does the ministry work?
Okay. Well, we do podcasts.
Okay.
In our house in South Tyler. That's
okay. A podcast in your house, South Tyler.
And we were doing the audio podcast for the last 3 or 4 months. In the last few weeks, just literally the last few weeks, we started preparing video podcasts because
get on Pando.
Yes, we have the ability through one of the apps that we're already on, and now the one we just got on 2 days ago, and it's going crazy. So those are our primary teaching tool now. Like Eve got to minister to women in a prison in Florida by Zoom
last week.
Yeah. Just the miracles of modern technology. She ministered to a whole prison full of women last week, and I'm sure we're going to be getting a lot more calls to do that.
Jeremy, everybody's wondering because until I met y'all the first time, I had no idea there was media capability in prison. Tell us about that.
Well, so it's just an amazing thing that God is really doing right now for his people.
Oh, it got to be.
In prison, the incarcerated people, Texas is rolling out these tablets. It started late last year. By the end of this year, it's supposed to be complete. Every inmate is going to have a tablet.
Okay.
Now, these tablets allow them to communicate with their families. It allows them to pursue educational opportunities like college and vocational training.
Yep.
They can play games on them. They can read books.
They can
watch
movies.
And they can watch movies. And they can listen to Christian podcasts.
And there's
they
a
can
ton.
watch Christian videos. I mean, the Pando app that she was talking about that was created specifically for prisoners has Elevation Church and Gateway Church and some of the biggest churches in America. It has their church services. It has live worship.
Awesome.
And these guys
for free to them.
Yes,
for free to them. So I mean, if the indigent gets a tablet because they're going to make money off of it. They gave them each $25, but then the family can invest and put money on their tablet and they spend it on that tablet. So it's a benefit to them, but it's a benefit to us as Christians and them. I mean, it's cutting down on crime. There are other states that have had these tablets for years. Texas just got them this year.
Yeah.
And they should be all rolled out by June. And there's about 140,000 inmates in Texas.
Okay, I'm like her. I see squirrels.
Yeah.
So let me get back to the. Okay, so Sal Tyler, you make podcast.
Yes, and we
And
also
then-
go preach in prisons.
Okay,
Yeah.
and you go and preach in prisons.
Yes.
And then, so are these weekly podcasts?
Yes.
Right now,
Sometimes
we're
we
doing
do more
2 or 3
than a
a
week.
week.
But
2 or 3 a week.
Absolutely, yeah.
All right.
Yes.
How in the world? So you went from Henderson, Texas, doing jail ministry, and here we are sitting about talking. Because I'm getting. I mean, you told me this already. How many people are y'all reaching?
1.2 million on the tablets.
1.2 million on the darn tablets.
And we're waiting for a response from the provider of the other tablet. Just think Samsung and Apple.
We're waiting on the response of
Yes.
another tablet that will cover probably the rest of the inmates in the United States, which there are 2 to 3 million at least.
Right.
And then it will go to the UK prisons, Australia prisons, Puerto Rico prisons, and Canada prisons.
How did y'all make that connect from Henderson to reaching 1.2 million?
It's just, I tell you, it's God. It's
the
absolutely
righteous
God.
God.
Don't make
It's
sense.
gotta
Praise
be.
the
Yes.
Lord. Yeah. Yeah.
It's the river. It's getting carried along, and
Yes.
one little thing happens, and then it carries you to another little thing that carries to another little thing.
Well, let me give you a concrete example of that. So we started on the one radio station that was near Tennessee Colony, where there's 5 huge prisons near Palestine, Texas, as you know. And we started because that's where we'd always gone. We'd gone to those units. Cofield, Gurney, and Beto were the main units.
Just
that we used
regular
to
radio
preach in.
stations.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
One
COVID
station.
shut down the ability to go into the prisons.
Yeah.
Oh,
So we
okay.
went to radio.
So we
With the
started
radio.
getting letters from guys that got moved from one of the prisons that they were in there and hearing our radio program and said, now I'm in Huntsville. Can y'all get a radio
Yeah.
station?
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
That's what pushed our faith, which
Yes.
stretched our
Okay.
faith.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And before you knew it, we're on 23 different
So,
radio
okay,
stations.
and
yeah,
so the-
looking at all those stations, I wondered how in the
Yes.
world.
So the main people, well, we want to reach them all, but the people that don't get anything, I'm always for the bottom of the barrel, are death row, G5s, that's a classification, and solitary confinement, which is ADSEG. They don't get to go to chapel, and they don't get anything. So they behave the worst, of course, because they get nothing. So we wanted to go in there and wanted to go in mass, and how can you, right? So the only way to do that was radio. And so radio began to reach ADSEG, which are our biggest probably supporters.
Yes, absolutely.
Because they had never been loved like that before. They had never had anybody ask, please let us go to ADSEG. Everybody, listen, even in prison, people want to go to the chapel. In prison, there are great worship teams. I mean, Beto, you walked in there and it was like Hezekiah Walker and his choir. It was that great. They have a choir. They have crazy great musicians on every instrument. And, all the people come. So largely people would rather go to the chapel. They're not saying, let me go to ADSEG where there's some urine and some feces got thrown out on the run and it smells and maybe I'm taking the risk they might shoot me with a dart or what have you, and I can't see them and there's not that mass and I can't take the choir and I can't take the worship team. People are not usually asking to go back there. And so we begin to ask, please let us go. And we went by radio at first, and they felt loved. They began to tell the field ministers, they began to tell their chaplains. And the chaplains were shocked. They said, we never seen this group of people promote a radio program or a group ever. We never seen them passing one guy in ADSEG typed out on his typewriter like 800 little flyers and paid somebody some coffee to go deliver it to every cell.
Oh my goodness.
And they said, we'd never seen this before. And the CVCA, which is like an assistant chaplain, gave me the flyer. He said, you got to see this. And he came with us to all of those pods. We did that had never been done before, and we've already done it twice. We're going to do it again, I think, in May.
In the May, yeah.
But we did every single ADSEG pod. And it 15 minutes each. And then every single G5, which is also really solitary confinement. They have the same rules, but they have a cellie. They never get service either. And we did every single pod. It took us about 7 hours, 15 minutes each. We sang about 50 songs. My voice was so sore.
Wow.
But yes, we want to reach the unreachable, even in the prison.
Is this female also, or just males?
Male, we've gone to
to
death
female
row and a
prisons.
couple
Yeah.
female prisons. There's a lot less of them, and they're all in like Gatesville. They usually are full. I think ministries are maybe more willing to go to women
Sure.
than men. So they, typically when you call, they're booked up. They say so.
Okay. All right. So speaking of that, how many other ministries go where y'all go?
Well,
lots.
There's lots of ministries that go into prison, but like she said, it's very
Not many
rare
that go
to
to
be able to go to
ADSEG.
death row and ADSEG and the
Okay.
kind of places that we get to go. And really, that's just God opening doors.
Yeah,
He
that's
opens doors no
definitely-
man can shut.
Yeah.
And I want to just say something, because someone close to me recently said something about the fact that these prisoners have tablets now. And basically was criticizing the fact
I
that
wondered if we were
prisoners
going to go there in this
have
conversation.
tablets. And I guess what I would say is this: first of all, how will they believe unless they hear?
Amen.
Right?
Amen.
How they hear unless there's a preacher, and how's there a
Amen.
preacher unless they're sent?
Amen.
And it's crazy to think that we as Christians understand that there's mercy and grace at the foot of the cross for
That's right.
everybody, for drug addicts, for anybody else, and those mistakes, obviously, that everyone makes, because we're all sinners. All have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God.
That's right.
And yet there's still it's really almost a political ideology that's crept into our theology in the church in America.
Of course, we call it.
Yeah.
We really believe
Yeah.
that there are misdemeanor and felony sinners.
Come on.
Right.
I call it a sin scale.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's bull crap.
Yes,
You're
come
right.
on.
And murder's a 10, and
Oh,
rape is a
yeah.
9,
Yeah, you bet.
little white lies a 1, and
You bet.
anything over a 5 go directly to hell. Do not pass
No.
go. Do not collect $200.
And we
Yeah.
all got a debt, brother.
Yes.
Come on.
And some
Yes.
of the guys that we're talking to today, their debt, they just got caught.
Right.
They just got caught.
Right.
Yes.
But we've all got a debt.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
And Jesus is the only one that can square us up with the Father.
Yes.
I don't
100%.
care if it's the
Yes.
smallest little bitty debt
Yes.
in the world. I can assure you, most of us, and I know I can speak for the 1,000 people that come to Crossbrand every Sunday. Most of us would say we just didn't get caught.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
and, and think
Right.
about this, God's standards are so much higher than ours.
Oh.
Jesus said, if you thought it, you did it.
Yeah,
That's right.
exactly.
Come on.
And so
Yeah. That's
right.
Just because you didn't actually do it, don't tell me you didn't think about killing
Right.
somebody.
Yes,
sometime.
sir.
right.
Jesus
I mean,
made it
everybody's
harder.
had those,
And go right down the
everybody's
list.
had
Yes.
those thoughts. Go down every sin and every list.
Yes.
There may be some that you hadn't thought about doing, but I'll guarantee you there's a lot that you.
I'm going to tell you, I don't know who all's going to listen to this podcast, and outside in the free world, but I will tell you, if you raise your nose, if you're snooty about these guys having tablets, you just need to take a step back. God is going to redeem. He can use those tablets.
Absolutely.
He's
100%.
doing it.
And
He
He's
is
doing
doing
it, so
it.
the proof's in the pudding. But
Yes.
it is incredible, the hypocrisy and the self-righteousness sometimes that we see.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And ultimately where would Jesus be today?
Right.
Where would he be going? He'd be going the same places y'all are going.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
If people don't know they're sick,
Yeah.
they don't need a
Right.
savior.
Right.
Right. Right.
So you got your Bible open too. What are you doing over there?
Oh man. Well,
And by the way, guys, I just got to take a moment here. I just want you to know, all the folks that are on the inside listening to this podcast, your fearless leader has a sissy cup that he's drinking out of today. So I need to make that clear.
tastes better.
I don't know if that's going to affect your credibility.
Now, come on,
in
man.
the
Put
prison.
this
That
camera
Bath and
on,
Beyond.
Chris.
So
Am I on this
how you
camera?
got this one here.
And I
So
got
right
guns
now-
on mine. Man.
But did you know that he brought it to you?
Yeah, I just had to say. I mean, I've known you for 2 months now, so that's good.
Pastor
It's
Mike,
funny.
all that fan mail y'all been getting at Crossbrand, if they turn, I'm just saying. And you know what? I'm secure in my masculinity.
I know.
I'll drink from my Bed Bath and Beyond cup.
I've got my friend Ray Barron's Freedom Defense cup here with,
I love it. I love it.
assault rifles on it.
I love it. Well, I was just going to talk about the outsiders, and we already did a little bit.
Okay.
But in Luke chapter 15,
Yes.
Jesus told this story, and he asked the same question. If a man had 100 sheep and he lost
Oh,
one,
man, that's a great
what would
story.
he do? He
It's a
would
great
leave
story.
the 99 and he'd go chase after the one.
Yes.
He'd go to AdSeg and he'd go to Death Row and he'd go to Cross Brand Church and go meet somebody who showed up for the first time and
That's
went to
right.
the arena because they're into cows, but they're not much into Jesus.
That's right.
And he'd go meet them where
Heck
they
yeah.
live.
Heck yeah.
And he'd deal with their
Share
issues.
the best part of that Galilean story.
Oh, okay, I will. All right. I shared this at your friend in Granbury's church on his line camp interview. It's so cool, that Jesus went and found his disciples from his red neck of the woods, right?
Yeah.
Would you like to know how many of the disciples were from the bad neighborhood?
Lay it on me.
11 out of 12. Would you like to hazard a guess, Pastor, which was the number
Churchy
12?
one.
I think we know that.
So I'm just saying, sometimes that one that comes from the bad neighborhood and
Oh.
comes from those rough places, that's
Yeah.
the one that you can
Absolutely.
trust.
You bet.
That's the one whose word is his bond, and that's the one who grew up in those places. And like she said, you can't intimidate a man who's been to prison for 15 years with, I'm going to throw you
already
in
been
jail
through
if you
it.
preach the gospel. You're like,
Yeah.
bring it. I ain't scared.
Well,
I got my whites
that's
on,
right. And in our
So-
world, a lot of you guys that are listening to us in the cowboy world, a lot of the bronchiest colts, the ones that are hardest to start, they're in the long run, they make the better horses.
Come on.
Wow.
They're just
That's
tougher.
cool.
They're
I
just
love it.
tougher. Endurance. And I've always said people are the same way.
Come on.
Absolutely.
Get some of these guys turned around and their stories. And a friend of mine is doing jail ministry up in our part of the world right now. I always told him when he was so messed up. I said, when God turns you around, you're going to be unstoppable.
Amen.
And he's in the jail 4 days a week.
Come on.
Four nights a week doing jail ministry now in a local county jail. And I said, I told you. And
Yes.
he said, yeah, you did. You did.
Would that county jail be one from our red neck of the woods?
Yes, sir.
For all our viewers, Pastor Mike and I are from the same places.
Yes.
We grew up in the same county.
That's right. That's
in
right.
fact, he's a neighbor cousin.
That's
His
right.
pastor's
We
just
are.
down the street from my cousin.
That's right.
So
That's right. Ranching up there in the metropolis of Wood County.
yeah.
I got number one. I got a little bone I need to pick with not y'all and not to our listeners. How many churches support you in your ministry?
You want to speak to that, honey?
One is these people we just met.
Due to a car
Country
wreck?
church.
Due to a car wreck.
Due to a car wreck.
Yeah.
We've never had any support for anything. And in fact, and I know that, there are people who take advantage, or a lot of ministries that, you give to, it don't go where it belongs. Sure. And so we even had like Carl, our assistant pastor, and his wife had gone on a day off one day and went to churches and asked, could you just donate a box of Bibles? Could you buy the Bibles and donate a box of message Bibles? We largely send message Bibles in because that's what they understand.
Yeah, yeah.
They wouldn't even do that. So, I think that as we spoke of, there is this idea, they did the crime, let them do the time. But we did the crime too.
Yeah.
And,
yes.
and he paid it all on that cross for them and us. And if his blood isn't enough for them, then it's not enough for us.
Exactly.
And so, there's got to be, there's this stigma. And then churches do love to support, and say they have, missions, in Africa. They support the children in
Yeah.
Africa. You know what I mean? Usually it's out of the country when,
Yeah.
and literally there
Wow.
are children here that are starving and things, but they just feel better if it's out of the nation. And then to top it off, they like to help children, maybe. But these prisoners are the children
Yes.
that were hungry, that were abandoned, that were
Neglected.
beaten, that were
Yeah,
molested.
I was waiting for you to say
These
that. Yeah, that
are
was-
the children.
Yes.
And
that
is
is
why
stuck with me
they're
when you
50
first
years
said it.
old and they still call me Mama Eve. They need a mama. They need love. They need family.
Yes.
You wouldn't believe the letters. Almost all of them say the same thing: is you feel like family. I feel like I'm getting a family visit. We got a letter from a guy that's in solitary confinement right now and has been for many years. And he told me about his life. And he said, my mama came over pregnant. I never knew my father. She got married, and this man started molesting me, beating me. I finally, at 13, got the confidence, the courage to tell her, and she said I was lying. And so it didn't stop.
That's awful.
That's when I got into the drugs. That's when I was so angry, hurt, and I began to lash out. And my whole life has been in and out of prison. I'm already 45 years old, and that's all I've lived, and that's all I know. And now my mom's died, so I don't have one family member left alive. I have nowhere to go. If I get out, there is nowhere.
Oh, no.
And there are so many in that condition, without a letter, without a visit, and with nowhere to go when they get out. No family members, no love. And their whole life has been abuse. And that's just one of so many.
And a lot of these guys are going to get out.
Yeah.
They're going to get out.
Do we want them changed when they get out?
Yeah.
You bet.
People that don't want to get ministered to. I mean, what are you thinking? So
I'm just a little shocked. I wanted everybody to hear that, though, that they've got one church supporting them, and they don't like talking about this, guys. But remember, they're working to support their own ministry. They're working secular jobs, outside jobs, non-ministry jobs to support this ministry. And so I want to challenge the listeners. I want to challenge anybody that we decided when we heard from you that we wanted to do kingdom work. We've never even wanted our name on anything. And that's another thing, Mama Eve. we were supporting a stripper ministry one time, and they were in the same boat. And I asked them, I said, why in the world? Why in the world aren't more churches supporting you? And they gave a list of reasons, but one of them that stood out to me, and this has been 5 years ago, was that, some of the churches don't want to support us because they don't get credit. They don't get their names on the flyers.
Wow.
And I think that's the stupidest thing. Yeah. Somebody's going to be heavily accountable for that kind of prideful. You have your
reward if that's you want
that's
name
it.
on the
That's
flyer.
what you get. That's what you get. Yeah. And so I want to challenge pastors and churches to, to give. Just give individuals. Give what you can. And here it comes. Uh-oh. There's going to be a link in the show notes. I've wanted to say that all of my life, all of my podcasts that I listen to, they say that.
So cool.
Eat your heart out, Elisa Childers, Frank Turek.
Well, we'll make sure that link's there. And we're happy. I'm happy and blessed and honored to be able to work a full time. It's more than full time. I work more than 40 hours a week every week for 25 years. And continue to do ministry as long as God requires me to do that. I believe at some point He's not going to require me to do that because He owns the cattle on 1,000 hills.
That's right.
Amen.
And I believe that
I got to say this with no note on it.
Yeah, with no note. Yeah.
From First National Winsboro, He has no note on his cattle.
Well, and so I do believe that God's going to do that, and I really believe, and I just want to thank you and Cross Brand for standing with us. And I want you to know, because she was talking about the prisoners that have no family, and there's thousands and thousands of them. I don't know if I can adequately convey how significant it was to many of our listeners to hear that your church stood with us in what we're doing. Man. What you have done unto the least of these, you've done unto me, Jesus said.
Man, I'm getting goosebumps.
And the second you joined with us in what God entrusted to us to do, you became their family too. Amen. And that's one of the reasons why we're so excited.
The notes I got, oh my gosh, guys.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
There's
wow.
more
I
coming,
weep
I'm
half
sure.
the day all week.
Now, I will say I have to look up the. There's so many words I don't know.
Lingo. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a whole culture in there, man.
It
I'm telling you,
is.
it's different.
It is.
really is.
It is.
Spanish, English prisoner.
Yeah, and but I was just absolutely blown away by the correspondence.
Yeah.
And whoever's listening to this thing, man, you got to know we love you. I love you. And it's going to be okay, brothers and sisters.
Amen.
I'm just out here, you're in there. But God is very good.
Amen.
And I think he said it all when he sent Jesus. And I just encourage everybody that's on the inside, on those tablets, and I don't know what y'all taught them, but just make sure you get to know Jesus.
Amen.
Come on.
And if you don't know where to start in John, because John and Jesus was tight.
Mm-hmm.
And so he knew the ins and outs of Jesus. He could almost read his mind, at times. I mean, later looking back, he would go, oh yeah, I remember that day. But guys, just get to know him. And another good one is, I don't know if y'all ever have read Jesus' little brother, James. It was his half brother. And he didn't even believe in him.
Yeah. Right. I love that.
John chapter 7 says he didn't believe. And so he ended up dying for his half big brother, James did. And so he wrote a book called James, and it's an incredible, guys. It can help you.
Amen.
It's one of those books that'll help you not even choke your cellmate.
Yeah.
That's necessary.
Yeah. Financially is a big thing. Are there other ways our listeners on the outside can help, on the free world can help?
Absolutely. We have a Cash App. It's $Real Vida. That's VIDA. So it's a little Spanglish, right? It's the English Real Vida, Spanish for Life Ministries. Real Vida Ministries. It's capital R, capital V, capital M. It'll be in the link.
In the show notes, in the link in the show notes.
And then Venmo is at Real Vida Ministries, capital R, capital V, capital M. We also have our website that's www.real-life-ministries.org, and our address is on there as well.
Okay, and do you guys when y'all go into the prisons, do you take volunteers?
We do.
And of course, I understand there's got to be a huge vetting system to that, but
not so huge.
Well, as a special volunteer.
Yeah, as a special
Cody and
volunteer.
Vanessa are planning on coming with us, and we're going to let them lead worship there. We're really excited about that.
Oh, my goodness, really?
Yes.
We're hoping to take a very tall special volunteer, wears cowboy hats a lot. We'd like to take him soon, too.
All right, let's talk.
We just need a driver's license.
Okay.
Let's go.
It's amazing.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Parting shots. What do y'all got for us?
There's so much more to talk about that, we didn't get to touch, but, if you can't go make a difference, but be in prayer. Prayer is powerful. Let me tell you something.
Come on.
Oh, my goodness.
Just very quickly. We have family problems too. We are all from perfectly normal, dysfunctional families. And so I got a book. Many of them are written books. And I got a book from a young man that went into prison at 16 years old. He had a psychotic episode. His mom was schizophrenic. He inherited it. And he took a family member's life, but didn't mean to. So he went in at 16. He's now about 43 years old. And he sent me his book. And so as I was reading his book, I could relate to some things in his family. And I sent word. His girlfriend got a hold of me out here on Facebook, and I said, please tell him that we're praying for him, and I relate, and I have that in my family as well. They immediately responded with, we're going to fast and pray for your family on Tuesday, which was this week. So she said, me and my boyfriend, who is incarcerated, are going to fast for you. Would you like to join us for your family? So, well, absolutely. For my family, let's do this on Tuesday. They then said, can we pass the word to the dorm over here in Missouri in this unit to the guys to ask them if they will pray? Absolutely, go ahead. Before you know it, we had several prisons across the United
multiple
States
states.
joining
way.
in fasting and prayer from 6 to 6 for my family member that I have not heard from for 2 years. And so they fasted for restoration of our family and communication on Tuesday. On yesterday, which was 1 day later, I got the phone call from him
No way.
for the first time in
No
2
way.
years.
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
Yeah.
That'll
Does
just
our
nearly
God
make
hear?
you go Pentecostal.
Come on. Come on. Does our God hear a prisoner? Does
my
God
goodness.
care? Does God honor fasting and prayer? Does
Yes.
God care?
That
Yes,
is
he
something
does.
else.
And the result is in my family. So we're not just the blessing to them. They are a blessing to us. And
Yeah.
so many times I tell them they're my spinach. I'm Popeye and I'm all weak in my muscles. I go and get my letters and before you know it, my muscles are
I bet
popping.
that's right.
You know?
Yeah.
And so, that is who they are. And they do minister to us. They'll send us a letter. Some guy told us when we were on one radio station, he said, I hear God say, you're going to be on radio stations across the United States. I thought, he's crazy. I can't afford that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before you know it, in 1 year, we were on radio stations across the United States. Then they said to us, we went to Cofield, and a guy fell in step with us. He said, this was months ago, about 8 months ago. He said, I feel like y'all are going to do video podcasting. I said, we're not going to do that. Like, no, we're not doing that, And
Again, that's why
yeah.
you got incarcerated. Just telling you.
Yes, and now a week ago,
Duh.
yes, it came to pass. And then some of them sent us letters. We feel like this is going to go nationwide. That's not happening. How could that happen? I can't
Yeah.
afford it, I said.
Yeah.
And then without affording it, we got pulled on podcasts for free to 47 states. And so look at our God.
Let me tell you something. We just went from spending $55,000 a year on radio to we're going to spend $60,000. I mean, $60 a month, $720 a year
On
to
that
reach
podcast.
3 million
No way.
men
Yes.
in 7 or 8 nations.
Right.
And of course,
Look at our God.
I mean, it's too much.
Amen. Amen.
Yeah.
Yes.
Amen. Chris, you got any parting shot, brother?
Love the prisoner.
Yeah.
Amen.
Get that. I've been in there. I know it. I see it. 90% of the guys that are in there are normal people.
Yes.
Yes.
That had a bad life, and they made their decisions. I understand that. But
Sure.
They made those decisions with a whole lot of baggage that had come on them.
Absolutely.
And there's some really, I'm talking about, you wanted to, I've seen some Paul-like Christians in prison.
Yes.
Amen.
Yes.
All over.
That
Yes.
are, like, in my eyes, like holy men. Like, I mean,
Yes.
and there's
Oh,
a
I
lot of them
bet,
in
Chris. I bet.
there. And there's a lot of guys in there that will put on the mask like they're mean.
Yeah.
But
Gotta survive.
if you get them in the right situation, all that comes off. And you
Amen.
see the little kid
Yes.
that was hurt.
Yes.
You see the little kid that had his mom leave him
Yes.
and had his dad leave him or was beaten or abused.
Yes.
And when you can get below that mask
Yes.
and that little kid comes out, then they start to grow. I'm telling you, I've seen tremendous change of men inside of the
Wow.
prison. And there's not enough
that's good.
workers. There's just not.
Yeah.
There's not enough. I mean, we do everything we can, but there's not enough workers.
Pray
to
ye
go
that
in
the
there.
Lord would send laborers
Yeah.
into the harvest.
I need harvesters.
Probably not
That's
any
good.
cowboys that have a tough front that they put up, are there?
Oh, no. Thank you for that word, Chris. Jeremy, you got a parting shot?
We just want to encourage everybody to pray with us on
Yes.
May 3rd. It's Wednesday. It's the day before the National Day of Prayer. On Good Friday, we
6 to 6
messaged
again.
Yeah, we messaged some people on Good Friday to ask them to pray with us. In a couple of hours, we got hundreds of men in 4 or 5 different states to pray with us
And
on
women.
Good Friday, and women. And now we have been putting it out for the last couple of weeks and are going to continue to. We think we're going to have tens of thousands of men
Absolutely.
praying and fasting.
Oh, my goodness.
From 6 and women from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. on
Okay.
Wednesday, May 3rd.
For revival in the prison, for
revival.
change
Yes.
in the prison, reform, and for healing and deliverance from things that they've had their whole lives, maybe
Yes.
an anger problem, maybe a drug problem. And that's what we're doing on that
Brokenness,
day.
rejection,
Yes. I've already heard. I heard from
Yeah.
Gadsden today that they are with us.
Come on.
For that day.
Gadsden, Florida Women's Prison. So
Yeah.
Okay, so be sure you guys hold me accountable for that. Make sure you remind
Okay.
me
Yes.
soon. That way I can get our people to do that day as
that's
well.
awesome.
you.
Thank
on
you
that
so much,
Wednesday.
Pastor.
All
That's
right,
amazing.
and then we'll pray when we gather.
Yeah.
On that Wednesday night. Thank y'all so much. We haven't even scratched the surface of
Right.
the information that I would love to get out, but maybe this will spark some interest, either through volunteers, funding, or prayer.
Yes.
Yes.
Prayer.
Amen.
Prayer.
Absolutely.
God bless you guys. Thank
God
you.
bless.